And welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining this series today for empowering nonprofit boards for success in the Adirondack region. I'm so grateful that you've joined us today. We have a great group here. And just wanted to say a quick hello. I'm Jen Russell from Adirondack Foundation. Happy to work in partnership with United Way, Cloud Splitter, and Andy Robinson to bring this series to you. I'm going to pass it to John Bernardi, who's going to give us a welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We're very pleased that you were all able to join us today. And on behalf of our partnership, Adirondack Foundation, Cloud Splitter Foundation, and United Way of the Adirondack region, we've put together a tremendous series to help empower Adirondack nonprofit boards for success. We're excited about it. Got Andy Robinson and some other great expertise assembled for you over the next several weeks. So we're very pleased to have you. And I hope that you will find it to be valuable and informative, and you'll make some new friends and some new contacts and build your network out further. And I'm going to pass it along to my partner and colleague, Cara Page from Cloud Splitter Foundation.
Good afternoon. I'm Cara Page. I'm on staff at the Cloud Splitter Foundation. Cloud Splitter is a grant maker based in Saranac Lake, supporting nonprofits. Our mission is to protect flora, fauna, people, and communities of the greater Adirondacks. We also do special projects like we give awards for childcare excellence and emergency funding for home health aides and long-term grants support for the region's nonprofits. And Cloud Splitter's leadership is so pleased to be working with the Adirondack Foundation, United Way, and Andy Robinson today on strengthening our region's nonprofits. Our partnership includes this series you are attending today, a Grants 101 workshop, and many other initiatives. So please make sure you are enrolled in the Adirondack Nonprofit Network hosted at the Adirondack Foundation to stay on top of these offerings. And I just want to call out to Jen Russell, who put together with Andy most of this work today. Thank you so much for joining. This is really, really a great opportunity, and we're so excited. So with no further ado, I want to introduce our stellar guru today, Andy Robinson.
Cara, thank you. And let me also thank everyone else who put this together.
That name.
That includes Cara.
Look it up.
That includes Dan, her colleague at Cloud Splitter, John and Brian, the United Way, Jen, and many, many people at the foundation. Thank you all. We are up to 134 people today, and they're still coming in, which means we have already hit a nerve. Clearly, you want and need this content. And the fact that the foundations are offering it pro bono is beautiful. It certainly adds to the accessibility, but clearly there is demand for this. So I think many of you have worked with me in the past. I'm Andy Robinson. I'm based in Vermont. I do a variety of training and facilitation on a variety of subjects. I'm sort of the Swiss Army knife of nonprofit consultants. I do a little bit of everything. And I get to work on the other side of the lake often. So I'm sort of an honorary Adirondacker, and I'm grateful to be in relationship with many of you. We want to know your primary role today. We're going to post a poll here in a minute. Maybe you're the board chair or the board president. Maybe you're a board member or other kind of volunteer, executive director, CEO, other staff. You may be one of those people who is employed with one nonprofit and serves on boards of other nonprofits, which is awesome. And perhaps you have a different role, like you're a consultant or a funder or some other role today. So let us know who you are. Give you another second. They're rolling in. This is great. All right. So here's where we are. 12% of you are board chairs, board presidents. 54% of you are board members or volunteers, which is our target audience. So thank you. 13% executive directors, 12% other staff, and 9% of you serve as both staff and board at different organizations. And thank you for your volunteering and also for your work as an employee. So we're going to stop the share. Now, regarding logistics, we have talked about this a little bit. We're here today. We have 6 weeks of this coming. We are recording all of these. We will send you the recordings. You'll have access to the slide deck if you need them. We're happy to share those. And we'll have other handouts each week in addition that we will get out to you in a timely fashion. There's a lot to cover, but I also want to say a lot of this is conversation. We have designed these to be interactive. You're going to be sharing your thoughts with each other. You're going to be learning from each other. There's a lot of expertise in this room, and it's not all with me. It's with you. So if you go through this series, and we're going to keep shuffling the deck, we'll have you working in different breakouts with different people. Make some friends, make some allies, figure out how you can help each other, right? What I like to say, if you come out of this series in 6 weeks and you haven't made 3 new friends, you flunked the class, right? So you don't want to flunk the class. You want to actually do the work. And part of that is building relationships with peers that you can support and who can support you. So we're going to practice this right from the start. In a minute, we're going to send you off to breakouts. I suspect by now you've all done a Zoom breakout room, but if you haven't, you will be invited to go to room 12 or room 18 or room 23 or wherever you're sent, and you'll find 3 or 4 other people there. And just do a quick round of introductions and share why you came, like what you're looking for from this series, why this is important to you, maybe one thing you want to learn. And this is a good warm up for where we're going. So Jen, when you're ready, or Leslie, or who's ever doing the breakouts, you'll have a chance in a minute to go to breakout, and we're going to have about 7 minutes on this. And we'll send you a warning when there's about a minute left. Okay, you can pause the recording. Thank you for remembering to turn on the recording. So I would love some sort of summary in chat if you can do it. If there's anything you want to share in terms of what you and or your colleagues are looking for in this series, that's really helpful to us. We also have the opportunity for 1 or 2 people to unmute, but what you have to do is raise your Zoom hand so we can call on you to do that. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. Certainly use chat if you are moved to speak verbally and you want to raise your Zoom hand, we will call on you and you can take 20 seconds and tell us what you and your colleagues are looking for from this program. And if not, that's okay too. Okay. So there's always a lag time with chat, and as it rolls in, I will encourage, we'll take a pause in a bit. I'm going to keep going, but I'll have my colleagues check. Oh, look, Laura, hand is raised. Well done. Laura, go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us one thing you're looking for from this program.
Well, I'm just, here ready to learn, but I'm an ED and I'd love to know how my board could help support the organization more because we're really small. It's just the board and myself. So,
yep.
That's why I'm here. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. That's great.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Michelle, what are you looking for?
Hi, everyone. Very similar. We are a small organization in the midst of quick growth and looking to grow our board, but also in what I heard in our small group, I'm also a board member with other organizations. So really looking at both sides, how to be a stronger board member and navigate some changes in staffing, as well as how to grow my own board.
Great. Thank you for attending. Diane, what about you? You're up next. What are you looking for?
Who's out here? I mean, who's out there? A listing of who you all are today. I had suggested in our small group that everybody put their website in the chat, because
Sure.
that's a good way to learn about each other. And our group is called the Adirondack Regional Immigration Collaborative. And so many bad things are happening in terms of ICE going to businesses that may be taking workers that already have papers. I'm looking to see who might be interested in networking with us and
Great.
addressing immigration problems.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your work. And thank you for asking for allies. I think we're all asking for allies. So it's good to name that out loud. Beautiful. Last chance, if anyone else wants to unmute, raise your Zoom hand. We'll call on you and you can share something you're looking for from this program.
Andy, forgive me, it's John Bernardi. I couldn't find
Don't
my
apologize,
Zoom hand.
John.
Couldn't find my Zoom hand. One of the things that came through in our group, and I think it also came through just from Laura and others, is a better understanding of the difference between management and governance,
Yeah.
and how those two distinct areas overlap and work together. It's just another way of putting it, and that came through in our group, and I think that's probably on the minds of a lot of people.
Okay. So somebody shared their screen. Oh, good. We've solved that problem. So I'm going to go back to sharing mine. John, that is helpful, and that never goes away. That question is a permanent one. So let me go back to my screen here.
I can't find my Zoom hand, but I just want to say, can we get a list of all the organizations rather than me having to copy and paste from chat? It's really distracting. Can we
Jen,
do it that way?
let me answer this two ways. First of all, we will save the chat log and we can send it to you as a Word document, so you don't actually have to cut and paste.
Okay, thank you.
That's easy. Jen, are we sharing lists or not? I forget our protocol here.
How about this? At the end of our session, I'll close us with some housekeeping notes. We're a large group, but I think things will pop up that might be helpful. So we can talk about that at the end. Maybe it's a post survey if you want to share that information, and then we circulate it. So
Yeah.
we'll save some housekeeping for the end.
Yeah, so some people want to be contacted and some people don't, and we have to respect that. But thank you for asking, because I agree with you. I think it's helpful to know who's here. All right, so let us proceed. Now, I want to say that I'm not a lawyer. I can't give you legal advice, but I do understand the basics of how we're built this way. Most of you are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Some of you have other tax status. Most of you are chartered by the state of New York, or perhaps you're operating from another state. Some of you may be informal, unincorporated organizations. We usually capture a few of those, but most of you are, legally chartered and all of that. Here is the deal. You're supposed to be doing something beneficial to the community: educational, artistic, religious, social change, whatever your mission is, you're supposed to be doing something that provides a public benefit. In exchange, you don't pay taxes. In exchange, if you're a 501c3, if people give you money, they can deduct it from their taxes. And the whole idea behind nonprofit boards is you're supposed to represent the community you are serving. You want to make sure that you're compliant with relevant laws. You want to make sure you're avoiding conflicts of interest. I want to say this bluntly, you belong to all of us. When you get that 501c3, you become a public entity. And this whole thing about transparency is a big deal. And this idea that board members are providing oversight, we're going to get into this today because today's topic is Governance 101. That's the role here. However, there are some challenges, and John already brought up this question of where does governance end and management begin, and where do you draw that line? The way we thought about this over the years is we have volunteers, board members, I will use the word amateurs, and I use that in a positive sense, who are supervising professionals. That's a weird model. And I understand why we built it this way. I see the value in it. I also see this problem. And again, if you're unstaffed and you're all volunteers, you're grassroots all volunteer organization, what I'm saying here is irrelevant to you. But most of you have employees, and most of you are in a situation where you have volunteer board members who are supervising professional staff. And there are some inherent difficulties, challenges, problems associated with that model. And I want to say, I'm going to try and get you back for the last session, which comes up in 5 or 6 weeks here, is I'm doing a whole session on lifespans of nonprofits and alternatives to the 501c3, like how else we might organize ourselves. So the point of bringing this up is that if you have tension or conflict or confusion between board and staff, or people are unclear about their roles, I am unclear whether that's a feature or a bug, right? It might actually be a good thing that there is that tension and conflict and confusion on those roles, and it may be a problem, and it might be both. So if you're feeling it, I think that's the way this thing is built. And I have become, I don't know what the word is. I have become more challenged by that. And which is why I'm always curious about how else might we organize ourselves. But, for today and for this series, we are really working within the traditional quote unquote nonprofit structure here. So let us run a list of what board members should be paying attention to. And we sent out a handout. I'll put it up on my screen, but there's a handout that accompanies this, which is sort of a worksheet. And I'm going to talk you guys through all of this, and we're going to send you off to small groups to do the worksheet with colleagues. So what are your responsibilities as board members? And, staff, pay attention because you need to know this too. First one is vision and planning. Long-term vision of success, strategic planning, and also succession planning. And that means both board succession, how are we recruiting new board members, how are we developing new leaders on the board, but also leadership for staff, because executive directors, CEOs, they don't stick around forever. And you want to have reasonable turnover, rational turnover. So I think board needs to be paying attention to long-term vision and long-term succession for the organization. Second category is evaluation and monitoring. You want to work with lead staff to make sure that you are meeting your goals, that you're setting good metrics to measure your impact, that you're tracking your results against those metrics. Classic part of board oversight is to work with staff to make sure you're actually having the impact you want to have as an organization. Fiduciary. So this is in the law. Nonprofit board members are fiduciaries, which means they need to oversee the financial health and integrity of your organization. And, I'm going to do a whole session coming up in a few weeks on financial oversight for board members. This becomes challenging for some folks because maybe they're intimidated by math or they don't understand accounting language and they will sort of avoid that part of the job. Ultimately, you need to lean into this. You need to be able to understand your organization's business model, and you need to help bulletproof it. And, considering the turmoil that's going on in politics right now, this job just became more important because a lot of organizations are seeing their business models disrupted. And boards need to be helping in thinking and helping in a thoughtful way. How do we strengthen our business model? How do we think differently about the ways that we raise money? Next category, this is a very broad category, is compliance and culture. Ensuring that your organization is following the law, avoiding conflicts of interest. This is the compliance stuff. honoring professional standards, and providing a healthy, rewarding work environment. There's a labor shortage. We need to keep good people. How do we create a workplace culture that really rewards them and makes them want to stay and dig in and do the work? And so a lot of that is management, but I think the board's role at a high level is to ensure that that's working, to ensure that you are compliant and that you do have a workplace culture that's positive and productive. You are all of you board members, you are all ambassadors. Part of your work is to represent the community. And that doesn't mean you necessarily, have to go to Rotary and make a speech. I realize public speaking is terrifying for a lot of people, but we all have our networks, right? We're all connected to friends. Many of you are active on social media. All of those relationships, and I don't mean for you to be mercenary, but all of those relationships can benefit your organization in different ways. So when you're inviting someone to be on the board, you're not just inviting them, you're inviting their network. And that needs to be explicit, and in a subsequent session, I think it's next week, we're going to talk about board job descriptions and what we expect of people and what they should expect in return. But I think there's a clear expectation if someone's recruited to your board that one of their jobs is to be a face of your organization within the communities that they engage. All right, fundraising. Yes, you need to help raise money. And we'll spend a whole session on this. A lot of this is not just asking for money, it's also building relationships and appreciating the donors you have and thinking holistically about fundraising. But I feel like everyone on a board and frankly, everybody in the organization should be part of this. And my goal, and we'll get into this in a few weeks, is to define fundraising broadly enough so that there's a place for everybody. Because I don't believe that everyone will be out asking specifically for money. I'm okay with that. But I think everybody can support the fundraising program. So I have a good colleague, a woman named Kim Klein, who's one of the gurus of grassroots fundraising. And I once asked Kim, I said, what's the number one criteria for recruiting board members? When you're looking for board members, what are you looking for, number one? And she said to me, I want learners. I want people who are curious. I want people who don't know everything and want to know more and are willing to invest in their own skill building and their own development. So this is a personality type, right? This is an attitude, but it strikes me as important. And it's not something you will see necessarily in the standard matrices of what you want in a board member, but I feel like it's important. We need people who show up with curiosity and humility and want to learn more about how to do the job better. Now, people got to show up, right? They need to come to meetings. They need to be parts of committees, right? They need to volunteer. And one of the things we don't talk about enough is what's the time commitment to be on a board? And, we'll come back to this as a subsequent session. I have come to the idea that we should start having timesheets for board members just to keep track of how much time they're spending. And I would make these timesheets anonymous because I don't want anybody to fudge. But I would love some baseline data. Because when people ask me to be on a board, the first question I always ask is, how much time are you expecting from me? And I never get a good answer. I never get a clear, explicit answer. So we need people who have the time to show up and prioritize at some level their work as a board. So that's my list. And I would love your list. And you can do this a couple of ways. If there's anything if you have questions about any of the ones I just listed, please. But if you want to add to my list, I would appreciate that. And you can put your answers in chat. Jen, keep an eye on chat. And if you want to unmute and share something verbally, you'll find your Zoom hand on the reactions one. So you can go there and raise your Zoom hand, and I'm happy to call in. So what would you add to this list?
Andy, we got a comment in chat from Valerie. Can you hear me?
I can.
She said, I don't feel that it's a conflict In a nutshell, the board volunteers ensure that the overarching goals of the organization are met, and then the expert staff implement the objectives and action steps to meet goals.
I think that's fair. Yeah,
That's okay.
I think that's right down the middle of the road. And the problem is, like in real life, does that work? And when do people get out of their lane? But I think you articulated that well, so thank you. Anything else regarding the board member bucket list you'd like to add or change to mine?
Kathy also said timesheets for the board are a great idea because that helps the nonprofit track volunteer time for grant applications.
Amen.
A
Amen.
really good one.
Yeah, thank you. And I will play with the number for a minute here. I think we'll see this again at a subsequent session. You got to come to board meetings, right? You got to prepare for board meetings. If you have a committee structure, you probably have to participate in a committee. There's the thing about helping with fundraising. There's the thing about being an ambassador out in the community. There's the stuff that pops up that you have to deal with that you're not. I mean, I'm currently serving on a board, and I am probably putting in, God, right now we're probably putting in 10, 12 hours a week. I mean, it's been a lot because this organization is in a big transition, and that's not normal. But, I've served on other boards where the typical amount we spend was, I don't know, 8 hours a month, 10 hours a month, 6 hours. I mean, but didn't know because we didn't have the timesheet. I was just guessing, right? But I would love if somebody says to me, how much time does it take to be on the board? I would love to be able to say, we did a time study. We kept timesheets for 6 months. And here's what we found out. The minimum amount that a board member was spending was 4 hours a month. And the maximum amount, this was the chair of the board, was spending was 20 hours a month. And the median amount was 8.5 hours a month. And that's what we know about our board. And my response would be, damn, you are organized. Like, that board, that's amazing, right? So I think it's like good to know internally for the reasons you said in terms of, grants and volunteer hours. But I think it's also a recruitment tool because you can have an honest conversation with someone about the time commitment. All right.
Andy, I think you should add supporting, evaluating, and hiring and firing the executive
director. Okay, thank you. I like it. So that's the great Joanne Caswell. Hi, Joanne. And yeah, I think the job of the board is to hire, evaluate, hopefully not fire, but possibly fire the CEO. So yeah, we could add that to the list. That's nice.
And Kate offered act as a sounding board and a coach for the ED.
Yeah, that in some organizations, that'd be really useful. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah. Again, that's one of those things where you can get over coaching, which is another word for micromanagement. So I would be sort of careful with that one, but I like where you're going. The impulse is correct. All right, so what we're going to do in a minute is we're going to send you off to your breakouts to talk about this. And I'm going to try and share a different screen here. So let me see if I can make this work. I think I can. Yeah. So we sent out to you this handout, which is a Word document. So you all should have it. We can also drop it into chat so people can pull it up if they need it. And it's basically a score sheet for all the things I just said. And you'll notice that there's space at the bottom for a couple of others. So we've already talked about supervising and evaluating the CEO. We've talked about providing coaching and mentorship for the executive director. You can add those if those are relevant for you. And the idea behind this form, go back to the top here, is that you can score the board as a whole. And then I also want you to think, if you're a board member, about your own participation. Like, how are you doing against this criteria? Now, the longer term play with this is if you find this exercise useful and you want to bring this back to your board and do this as an exercise with your own board, that could be really helpful. And if you do this and then you're like, this didn't work for me or this isn't helpful, not to worry. We are going to give you the whole toolbox over the next 6 weeks. So not every tool is going to work for every person or every organization, and I'm fine with that. But the goal is for you to pick the tools that are going to work best for your group. This is one of those tools. So I think the instructions are pretty clear. Everybody should have this. Again, we'll drop it into chat for you. And what we're going to do is send you off to breakouts. Let me do time check. I'm pretty good on time. Let's give them 10 minutes on this, Jen. And so we're going to find you some new friends this round. And what I'd have you do is just spend a little time looking at this and talking through it with other colleagues. And you won't actually have time to fill it all in. That's fine. I'm basically introducing the tool and you'll start working it in the small groups. And then, as I said, I hope you'll take it home and finish it. So the goal is to talk a little bit within your small groups, how your group is doing against these criteria. Things that are working, things you're proud of, things that your board does well, maybe some areas of weakness where you need to give a little more focus. Jen, would you open up the breakouts? And we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Welcome. Oh, well done, Jen. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a productive conversation. I would love, first of all, mute yourselves if you'll do that. If you would like to share one thing your board should be working on based on this assessment, conversation, or perhaps one thing you want to learn more about, and you can do this in chat, or you can unmute and do it that way. Again, raising your Zoom hand is helpful so we can call on you. But what's your takeaway from that conversation? And there will be the awkward pause while people chat in their answers, and that's all good. Eric, I see your hand. What's one thing you want to work on?
I think ours was a very rich breakout group. I say that in terms of the diversity of organizations that were represented there. We went from one organization where one of our members was representing a board that was doing a tremendous amount of day-to-day work in maintaining the organization, whereas others of us, like myself, for example, are in an organization where the staff is doing most of virtually all of the work in terms of carrying forth the mission. So it provided a rich environment for comparison.
That's good. Thank you. And, my takeaway from what you just said is if you know one board, you know one board. And we want to generalize and say all boards should be doing this and all boards should be doing that. And it's way more complex than that. Erica, your turn.
I thought it was really interesting that our group ended up really being a group of people who don't have that much experience. So that was kind of an interesting takeaway that we're all here to learn so much about what should be happening or what these interactions should be like or what we should expect. And I thought it was just very fascinating that our whole breakout group ended that way, ended up being that, because we were kind of like, wait, I don't know that much about this either, or I'm new to a board, or we're building a board, or I'm new to the organization, which I think kind of leads to, it led to just an interesting conclusion that at the end of the day, what we really, I took away that what we really want is what are we supposed to expect? What is big, and I realize that's not always going to be in black and white, but a little bit of a concrete, what is this person supposed to do, or that person, or where is the support? Really knowing what those layers are feels like an important thing to somebody who's new to it or building it or just getting that experience for the first time.
Lovely. So I'm hoping you're available for all 6 weeks, because our job between now and the middle of April is to answer the question you just asked, is to figure out all the things that you are supposed to be doing as board members. So I think this is a good warm-up for the rest of the session. So that's great. So I'm going to open it up to any questions, and someone should be moderating chat for me here. But if you have any questions you want to ask now, or there's any other reactions to the conversations you had in breakout, this would be a chance to do And again, you can put them in chat or you can raise your hand. We'll call on you and we're happy to take questions verbally. And while that's happening, I'll take a moment and preview what's coming. Next week, we are talking about financial oversight and fiscal responsibility, all the oversight of money stuff. On the 21st, we're going to talk about recruitment and nominations. How do we get good people on our boards? This includes conversations about board job descriptions and creating a board matrix to figure out specifically what we're recruiting for. On the 28th, we're going to talk about fundraising and the board's role. On the 4th of April, I'm handing it off to John and Brian from the United Way to talk about orientation and training of new board members. And then I'll be back for the last session on the 11th, which is about alternative governance models, like how else might we be governing ourselves, and how nonprofits change over time, what those life cycles look like. So that's where we're going. It's pretty rich. I mean, there's a lot of good content in here, I think. So I'm appreciative of that. Do you have any questions from today?
There's some in the chat. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, go ahead. Somebody. It's hard for me to do this and read chat at the same time. So feel free to read a few from the chat for me.
First I see is how to prepare, cope, be more nimble with our budgeting.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about that a little bit next week. I will say this, and perhaps I'll send this, if this is a good cue, I'll send this as a handout for you in advance of next week. I believe in creating contingency budgets, which means when we're doing budgeting, we have scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, maybe 3 of them. And it's like middle case, worst case, best case. Or maybe for some of you right now, it's middle case, worst case, really worst case. And we plan for that. And then the question is, when do we move from budget A to budget B? What are the triggers that force us to change from one to the other? So I will share a couple of handouts about that. I think that's a great question. Thank you. Anything else in chat?
Oh, lots. The nimbleness with fundraising in this current uncertain environment came up in my small group, but also Sharon raises it here in chat. So that goes to your point about having A, B, and C.
Yeah, multiple budgets is one solution to that. Yeah, I mean, I will say this. In response to the Great Recession, so we're talking 2008, 9, 10, I put together some workshops with colleagues called Managing in Hard Times and things you need to do when the economy is unstable or you're seeing loss of funding or things are just difficult. And I'm going to pull that out and look at it again because I feel that the time has come. I think a lot of the wisdom remains the same wisdom, which is focus on core programming, protect the programs that are most essential to your mission, think differently about fundraising, try and diversify your revenue, and be as adaptive as you can be. Be responsive to the moment and try not to lock yourself in too much. But yeah,
tell your friends what's going on, right? Tell your core donors.
Yeah, that's true. Share the news. So I got time for perhaps another question or two if they're out there. Nathan, I see you.
Hi, Andy. Great to be here.
Good to see you.
Yeah. This came up in our breakout room, and I'm just curious to query your wisdom. We started with vision and planning, and I talked about on our board, we often get caught up in the fires that are going on, right? There's budget problems, there's staffing problems, whatever it is, and months go by, and how do you set aside time for that vision and planning? And I wondered if you had any strategies or even sort of concrete things to say, hey, set aside this time every meeting, or set aside this time every quarter, or do an annual retreat, or just kind of some structure. What would you suggest providing structure to that?
Yeah, so a nice question. I'll answer directly and indirectly. The direct answer is you probably need to do that annual retreat where you're sitting down at least once a year and asking those large questions. And that's a day of people's lives, and I realize everyone's busy and a lot of your folks have young children, et cetera, and you got to do it. So that's the sort of simple answer. The more complex answer, and I will reference Stephen Covey, who's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People person. And there's this thing called the Covey quadrants, and you can look this up online. You can Google it. It's pretty easy to find. And the two axes are importance and urgency. I may be doing those backwards, but the point he makes is we tend to spend a lot of time doing stuff that's urgent that may not be important. And his spiel is you should be spending 60% of your work time, which is hard to get to, but 60% of your work time doing stuff that's important but not urgent. And this requires a great deal of discipline, but everything you just said, Nathan, fits into the important but not urgent category. So in our ideal work life, we're actually designing our weeks that include some time for that. So I think my answer is both and. I think you probably need to do the annual, let's get away from the school and let's go to someone's beautiful house or someplace and just talk about the future. But also I think you have to block in time every week. Like maybe it's, Friday morning at 9 o'clock, you're going to spend an hour and a half just doing long-term planning and not look at your email and not respond to stuff that's in front of you. And again, it requires a great deal of discipline. I sort of suck at that, but I think it's good advice, even if I don't do it well. All right, so we're approaching the top of the hour. Again, we have lots more content coming, and I'm excited to be a part of this, and I'm excited to see many of you back here next week and in subsequent weeks. And then my contact info is here. Jen will do the wrap here on the logistics and the housekeeping, but I'm excited you all came, and I'm excited to be working with you over the coming month and a half. And let me give it back to you.
Thank you, Andy, for this great first session. Thank you all of you for joining and spending this lunchtime hour with us today. A couple logistics notes came up earlier in the conversation. We've made a sheet where if you would like to share your contact as part of this group, this cohort, you can put your information in. I'll circulate that to everybody by email. That way people can opt in or opt out, right? So I know Google might not be accessible for everyone, so give me time to think about the secondary option, but I already see many of you in there populating that. We are recording and we will be sharing recordings with the next week's preparation materials as well. So keep an eye out for that. With the Zoom, I think there's some confusion. So we did have sort of a point person from each organization do the registration on our payment page. And you can share the Zoom registration link with your group. This ensures you put your name in and your contact. This ensures we can reach out to you with the materials. It should be good you can use the same link that Zoom sends back to you for the whole session. You can add it to your calendar, or you could just do that each week. Both ways will work for you. So when people click on the link and say, it seems, you got to register, it's just putting your name in and then it'll send you the link to join. So happy to help clarify or answer questions about that piece so that we all make it here. And last note is we'll probably just send out a quick question or two to you if you have feedback, things that you want to see, comments, notes, related ideas. We'll make a space for that so we can collect that information from you all. And thank you so much for joining. And it's great to connect and have conversations and breakouts today as well.
Thank you.
See you all next week.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for putting it together.
Great. And thanks to all of I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.